It's been called the most ambitious U.S. industrial labor action in decades. On Friday, United Auto Workers Union launched simultaneous strikes at three factories owned by General Motors, Ford Motor, and Chrysler parent Stellantis. About 13,000 workers embarked on the strike, capping weeks of clashes between unions and Detroit's three executives, with disagreements over profit shares and job security. President Joe Biden has, however, shown sympathy with the protests. Take a listen.
For the past decade, auto companies have seen record profits, including the last few years because of the extraordinary skill and sacrifices of the UAW workers. But those record profits have not been shared fairly, in my view, with those workers.
Well, to help shift us into gear with this story, let's turn now to Todd L, Director of the Political Management Program at George Washington University. Todd, thank you so much for joining us. What has, in a nutshell, led to this mass mobilization?
Well, it's great to be with you again. What we know really has led to this is what we call labor summer over here. There's been a number of different labor movements in the United States, and labor sees an ally in the White House. And they're feeling emboldened. They've had a number of different strikes that have been settled or new contracts that have come through. And particularly with these auto workers, they've looked at a number of corporate profits that have really been on the rise, and they haven't had a real significant pay increase since 2007. And Joe Biden himself has said that record profits mean they should get a record contract.
Now, in terms of their demands, I mean, would you say that they are in line with inflation? Do you expect them to get their way?
Well, it's really interesting because they're asking for a 40% price hike 40% increase in pay, which is certainly above inflation, but it's at the same rate as which you would have put it back to the 2007 level. So the union is looking back at what they used to have and trying to grab back or claw back some of those losses that they had over the past 15 years. And the auto companies themselves are making some offers that most people would consider pretty generous if you didn't consider the losses that workers have been taking for so long.
And that seems to be almost a running theme, those losses, and we're seeing it, lots of strike action across the board in the United States. Mm-hmm. But back to this, how do you expect manufacturers now to respond to these demands?
Well, particularly in this one, this is the big one, like you mentioned, and of course Joe Biden knows that, and for that reason he's sent Labor Secretary Julie Su and one of his senior White House advisors, Gene Sperling, out there to help with the negotiations. It doesn't do anybody any good for a prolonged strike. In fact, the strikers themselves are doing sort of a staggered strike where they are just shutting down a couple factories at once instead of the entire lot of them. And so for that reason, this is going to be something that people are going to have an eye on. There are other sectors that are looking for increases. And of course, workers really want this now because they've been dealing with inflation over the past couple of years.
And now just on a political side, I mean, Joe Biden's re-election effort, it's not actually been endorsed by the UAW, the United Auto Workers Union. Why then would he show sympathy?
Well, this is because Joe Biden has always been working class Joe and a big friend to the unions throughout his entire political career. This is who he is. And this also plays into the new theme for his reelection, which he's calling Bidenomics, which is a focus on jobs and good paying jobs rather than really focusing on the other issues that Republicans might want to focus on, such as inflation.
Todd L, thank you so much for your insights. Of course, we will be keeping up to speed with those strikes and how they progress.